All right, today we're jumping into a theory that honestly tries to explain pretty much everything. It's called consciousness and magnetism, and it's a worldview from VP Rajamohan that draws a straight line from the Big Bang all the way to our deepest purpose in life. It's a huge idea, so let's dive in and see how it all connects. So, let's kick things off with the one really mind-bending question that this whole thing is built on. What if consciousness isn't something that's just inside our heads? What if it's not something we have, but something the universe fundamentally is? Just hang on to that thought, because literally everything we're about to talk about hinges on it.
To really get this worldview, we've got to go back, like all the way back to the very beginning, and look at its three most basic building blocks: space, force, and consciousness.
First up, there's something called absolute space. Now, according to this model, this is where it all begins. Picture this: silent, motionless, all-powerful state that's everywhere and is in its essence divine. But here's the key. It's not empty. It's packed with potential, already containing force, consciousness, and even time within it.
Okay, so what do they mean by consciousness? In this context, it's not about thoughts or feelings, not at all. It's the built-in, perfect order of how things work. It's the flawless logic of the cosmos. It's the reason an atom always acts like an atom, and a planet never forgets its orbit. It's the underlying blueprint for reality.
The crucial idea here is really all about scale. Think about it. You and I, we have a little bit of force. We can push a chair, right? And our human consciousness knows exactly how much force to use. But the universe? It operates with what this theory calls a great force and a great consciousness. That's the unimaginable power that spins our entire planet in the perfect, unwavering order that makes sure it rotates in exactly 24 hours every single time.
Right, so we've got this infinite, still, divine space. But how do you get from that to, well, everything we see around us? This brings us to the birth of the very first particles in the cosmos. And the process is actually pretty straightforward. That absolute space takes its own incredible inherent force and turns it inward on itself. It creates this immense, self-compressive pressure, and that pressure literally crushes tiny bits of space into existence, creating the first form of physical matter in the universe, divine dust particles, or DDPs for short.
Now, this is where it gets really cool. That same crushing force doesn't just create the particle, it forces it to spin at an unbelievable speed, and that intense spin creates a repulsive force, pushing everything away from its center. The theory calls this unmanifested magnetism. It's like the raw, fundamental energy of the universe, just waiting for something to do. A great way to think about this, and the source gives this perfect analogy, is to picture a tiny, invisible tornado. It's this little vortex of pure energy whipping around in the otherwise calm fabric of absolute space. That's a divine dust particle. Okay, so now the universe is filled with trillions upon trillions of these tiny, spinning energy tornadoes. But how in the world do they go from that to building entire galaxies, stars, and planets? Well, that's the next piece of this giant puzzle. It all boils down to one simple, elegant principle. Remember that repulsive push-away force caused by the particle's spin? Well, what happens when they start to slow down? That push-away force gets weaker, and when it gets weaker, for the first time, these particles can actually get closer to each other. This, right here, is the secret to how everything in the universe is formed. And the result of that is, well, cosmic creation. As the spinning slows, particles can finally clump together. Groups of DDPs team up to become energy particles. Then, as they slow down even more, they form basic elements, then planets, then stars, and eventually the enormous galaxies we see in the night sky. The entire physical universe is built on this simple principle of just slowing down.
And here's where it gets wild. This model actually lines up surprisingly well with modern cosmology. In this theory, that vast, unseen absolute space is basically what scientists call dark energy, which makes up about 68% of the universe. Those invisible spinning DDPs, they act like dark matter, accounting for another 27%. And that means everything else, all the stars, the planets, you, me, everything we can see is just the leftover 5%.
Okay, so we've built a universe of stars and galaxies from these spinning particles. But what about life? How do we make that jump from inanimate rock to a living, breathing being? This is where a new concept comes in: biomagnetism. So get this. According to the theory,
The fundamental building block of life is the exact same stuff that makes a star. It's a basic energy particle, which is just a clump of those DDPs. But the very moment that same particle starts circulating inside a living body, it gets a new name, a life force particle. Same stuff, just a totally different job. So what is life, really? In this view, it's simply the circulation of these life force particles. And as they flow and move through a body, they give off magnetic waves. All those waves together create a collective energy field, and that field is called biomagnetism. It's the animating force inside every living thing.
And this is where it all comes full circle, from the biggest cosmic scales right down to the most deeply personal question we can ask. If we are animated by this universal cosmic energy, then what's the purpose of a human life? Well, at the heart of our own personal energy system is something called the genetic center. You can imagine it at the base of the spine, and it's basically the power plant for your own life force. It's the central hub where your biomagnetism is concentrated, intensified, and then circulated out to every single cell in your body.
So if you think about it this way, your entire life is just an exercise in energy management. It's like running a personal energy budget. Food, that's your income. It increases your stock. But things like work, pleasure, and even just your own thoughts, those are all expenditures. They drain that stock. And sleep? Sleep is absolutely crucial. It's the nightly audit that balances the books and restores your equilibrium.
And this energy balance, this budget, is directly tied to your most basic feelings. It's almost like a simple, elegant equation. When your energy income is greater than what you're spending, you feel pleasure. When your expenditure is more than your income, you feel pain. And what happens when they're perfectly balanced? When income equals expenditure? That's when you experience peace.
So what's the ultimate goal of all this? What's the point? According to this theory, the whole purpose of human life is to purify that genetic center, because over time, it gets cluttered with three main impurities: our ego, the residue of past negative actions, which are called sin imprints, and illusion. The spiritual path, then, is all about cleansing these away to return our energy to its pure original state.
And what happens when you finally do that, when your consciousness is perfected? Well, the spiritual teacher Vethathari Maharishi, whose work heavily inspired this model, put it beautifully. He said, "Blossom of love is perfection of consciousness." It suggests that the final destination of this entire cosmic journey, from the very first spinning particles all the way to us, is the simple, profound realization of universal love. It's a fascinating way to think about our place in the cosmos.